Hello, my name's Angela, and this summer I interned under the Duke-Margolis Center for Health Policy and the Center for Policy Impact and Global Health under Dr. Wenhui Mao and Casey Kennedy, studying donor dependency and transition vulnerabilities through a mapping analysis on 2 data sets. To give some necessary background, we currently know that foreign aid plays a huge role in financing health systems in the world's poorest countries. For example, according to a WHO report on global spending, approximately 30% of total health expenditure in low-income countries was from external aid. Several low-income countries have over half of their total health expenditure from external aid. When these countries develop economically, donors often reduce their support in financing health in these countries, in a phenomenon called transitioning from aid. If a country is unprepared to transition from aid, this can result in catastrophic effects to the country's health system. Thus, understanding the role donors play in a country's health system is important to properly assess whether a country is overly dependent on donors and thus more susceptible to transition vulnerabilities. 2 databases are typically used to assess this foreign aid for health: the Global Health Expenditure Database and the Creditor Reporting System. Through its reporting of external health expenditure from the recipient country's national health account, the Global Health Expenditure Database is used for tracking how a country uses donors' aids across different purposes. Through its reporting of donor disbursement, the Creditor Reporting System is used to identify ODA for health for a country and has data disaggregated by donors and specific health projects. However, because of the conceptual and practical differences between these 2 metrics, it is really difficult to accurately track how much aid is directly allocated to a country and how that country uses that external aid. Thus, our project sets out to explore the disparities between the 2 methods to improve the tracking of health aid and to inform research seeking to identify countries vulnerable to transition. So, to start this analysis, we performed 2 key calculations on the previously aforementioned metrics. The first one is absolute difference, and the second one is proportion of variation, and we do this for each year a given country receives aid. And then we disaggregated this by World Bank income group and the WHO region. To just clarify a little bit, the proportion of variation calculation was performed in order to make sure that 2 countries receiving different amount of aids could be more comparable. In order to explain our data analysis results, we then conducted interviews with the 2 databases' technical managers. So moving on to our data analysis, we found that the overall difference between the Creditor Reporting System and the Global Health Expenditure Database was approximately 8.5%. As we can see in our first graph here, the low-income countries featured greater disparities as compared to low to middle-income countries. In our second graph, we can see that Eastern Mediterranean regions, followed by African regions, featured greater disparities. Interestingly, we also found that American regions almost featured completely negative differences, indicating that external health expenditure would be greater than donor disbursement. We'll explore potential explanation for these trends in a little bit. In the interviews, we identified the definitional differences between the 2 databases. Namely, the Global Health Expenditure Database technical manager confirmed that there were differences in how these 2 databases defined health and what donors were accounted for in these databases. The interviews also revealed that some of our trends may result from reporting cycle differences, and that these results may be affected from reporting issues across both databases. When we consider these interview findings, we now have some potential explanation for the trends that we found in our data analysis. For example, the disparities between low-income countries and low to middle-income countries may be attributed to a need for more administrative help or technical support for low-income countries, as the Creditor Reporting System factors human resources into its definition of health and within each project. So this may contribute to the relatively greater median proportion of variation in African regions as well as compared to other WHO regions, considering that African regions tend to be low-income countries. Discrepancies across the Eastern Mediterranean region can also be attributed to underreporting in the Global Health Expenditure Database. The differences across WHO regions may indicate that researchers should be more wary of comparing health aid values because of the variations in data quality across regions from the Global Health Expenditure Database. In general, we know that the data from the Global Health Expenditure Database is more variable in quality than the Creditor Reporting System. Ultimately, by identifying considerations In using these databases, our findings in this project are useful to improve tracking of health aid and inform future research seeking to identify countries vulnerable to transition. Thank you so much for listening into the presentation.